everybody, my name is Devery and today I'm going to be teaching you the I-cord bind off. It's a great stitch to add to your library and it adds a really unique and clean edge to the finishing of your projects. I have here a little piece of sample knitting. This is about 30 stitches worked and in the knit stitch front and back to make this really nice stretchy garter stitch. This is a big twist worsted weight yarn. These are size 8 needles, but this technique will work on any size yarn with any size needle. The first thing you're going to want to do is cast on 3 stitches. So whenever you're done with your knitting, wherever you are, to finish this off, you're going to cast on 3 stitches. You can do this many different ways. There's the knitted cast on, where you go in just like you're going to knit and you pull the stitch out, but instead of taking that stitch off, you're going to add the new stitch on. Okay, let me show you that one more time. So you go in like you're going to knit, you wrap this around, you're going to pull that out, and you're going to keep both stitches, so that adds another stitch. I personally like the thumbnail cast on, which is basically just wrapping your thumb with the yarn and then placing it on the needle. That's my preferred cast on method, but you can do whichever one you feel the most comfortable. Keep in mind that cast on stitches, no matter what technique, are always a little tricky to knit the first time around. So we're going to start by knitting. That's kind of what I mean. They're always kind of tight and tricky to knit in the beginning. We're going to knit 1 stitch, knit 2 stitches, sorry. And now this is what makes this different from a normal I-cord, is that we're binding off. So on the 3rd stitch, we're always going to knit 2 together. And if I can do this without splitting this yarn from these 2 that are here. So we're knit those 2 together. Okay. Now we're going to place these these stitches back on your left-handed needle. Okay, so your working yarn is in the back like it would be if you were working an I-cord. And you're going to do that exact same stitch over, or that same row over again. So we're going to knit 1, knit 2, and then knit these 2 together. Okay. Now the trick of this, to make this bind off look really nice, is to keep that tension really well between the knit 2 stitch and then that beginning of that row again. So you really want that to create that cord by keeping these stitches kind of tight. Okay, so I'm going to knit 2 again. Okay, I'm going to place these back on my needle. I'm going to do it again, and this is it. This is the repeat. Knit 2, knit 2 together, place back on the left-handed needle. And you can already start to see that it creates this really nice rolled over bind off on your work. I'm going to finish all the way to the end so that you can see how it looks, and then we will talk about working the salvage edge, or the edge that doesn't have any needles. Sorry, any stitches. I'm coming to the end of my row here. And there's a couple of things that I want to point out, if you haven't already noticed, is that this bind off method is not stretchy. This is not something that you are going to want to put on the edge of any garment or item that you need stretch. It will also not prevent a stockinette stitch from rolling. In fact, it's probably going to help it roll. But you can see it does create this really beautiful rolled over edge Okay, now there's a specific pattern that I have that uses this technique, and you can see this hood here. It uses that technique down here on the bottom. And when you're working in the round, you will just start wherever you're starting, and then at the very end, you'll just stitch the ends together. And hopefully yours can be a little more seamless than mine. But you can also pick up stitches and add this to the side. So if you can see here, I've got the side of my hood, and the pattern is beautiful, but the edging just, it was not very pretty. I did not like the edging, especially this was going to be around my face. I wanted it to look really nice. So what I did was I picked up the stitches around the edges of the hood, and then I did my I-cord bind off. Now I made sure to pick up more stitches than you think. A lot more stitches than you think. Well, I guess I can't say a lot more, but quite a bit more than what you would normally think if you were knitting, because you want this part to have just a little bit of stretch, and that might take a little bit of trial and error to find out how many stitches is enough, depending on how you want your hood to be. You can also consider, as you are doing this, placing a piece of elastic between the stitches if you really wanted to. But I'm going to show you on my sample piece here about the picking up the stitches and then knitting them. So right here, I would generally, if I were picking up stitches to knit, I would try to pick up stitches depending on how many stitches I needed to pick up according to the pattern. I would pick up these little purl bumps right here. You see that? So these little little bumps here from the purl. So I would pick up the stitches beforehand, before I was ready to, prior to knitting this. I would pick up these stitches along the side here. And then I could continue with my I-cord all the way around. So I'm going to use a scrap piece of yarn and pick up these stitches, and then I'll come back and show you as I'm working the I-cord around this side what it looks like. I've picked up my stitches and I am ready to continue with this I-cord bind off, sorry. So exact same way that you were doing it before. Knit 2 stitches and then knit 2 together, replace back onto the needle. So it's nothing new. The only difference is that these are not stitches that I was previously working. I had to pick them up. But I'm doing the exact same thing. Doing the knit 2 at the end so that I'm binding off 1 stitch at a time. Now this bind off does take quite a bit longer to work, but it does look really nice on the edge of your knitting. As you can see here in just a bit, as I get a little bit further down, you'll be able to tell how well it looks. Even around that corner, look at how nicely that, I split the stitch there, you can see a little fuzz, but look how nicely that did around the corner. I just imagine how beautiful this would look around the base of a sweater and then up around the collar. It would take some time, but boy, would it look beautiful. I currently have 2 patterns that use this technique. They are both hood patterns. You can find them. Oh, I just dropped all those stitches. Let's try that again. You can find them in my Etsy shop. I will post pictures. Well, I will add pictures in the video here so that you can see what they look like. I gifted one of the patterns, or the finished product, so I don't have it with me, but I do have this beautiful mustard color yellow one next to me and I'll show you again. Okay, so I'm almost done here. Thanks for hanging in with me. It seems to be a yarn splitting day. Do you ever have one of those? You just can't seem to make it work. Okay, so now that I'm to the end, I did a couple of extra little stitches to kind of finish off the I-cord, one extra row. That way I had plenty to kind of stitch into. Oh, I just pulled all that out. See, it just seems to be one of those days. Okay, so here we are at the end, and you can see, look how nicely, all the way around. And on this edge, this garter stitch edge, which normally, this looks good. Don't get me wrong, this looks good. But that just looks so finished compared to that edge. And I find that it's worth the extra time and attention to make that edge look so nice. So again, this is the hood. We have the I-cord bind off along the bottom, these live stitches, and then we picked up stitches along the face opening here to achieve this I-cord bind off look on the top. I'll show you guys what the back looks like. It's got this beautiful weave stitch. This is called the Honey Wheat Hood, and I will put a link in the description box to my Etsy shop where you can find this one along with another one that uses this technique. Thank you guys for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed it.